Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
This episode is brought to you by Pepsi Wild Cherry. Pepsi Wild Cherry is bursting with delicious cherry flavor and a sweet, crisp taste that gives you more to go wild for. Getting wild may look different these days, but whether it's opting for a solo Friday binge watch or a big night out, everyone can indulge in their wild side with Pepsi Wild Cherry. Also available in Zero Sugar. So grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
Hello, Duke fans. Welcome to episode number 28 of the DBR Bites.
You had to think about that, Jason.
Evans. Yeah, thank you. I guess we could also title this an emergency podcast, an emergency episode, because Mike Elko is leaving Duke and headed to Texas A&M. The Duke football program got 2 years, almost exactly 2 years out of Coach Elko, and then he moved on to, I guess you would say, greener pastures. And we're going to be discussing that. I am Jason Evans. Joining me, as always, is Donald Wine. And we have another special guest with us, a man who has been closely connected to the football team over the years and a very familiar voice here on the DBR podcast, Sam Klein. Sam, thanks for joining us on a sad day for Duke football.
I don't know that you would describe moving from Durham to Texas as greener pastures. They're more tan, I think.
I think the money's green. Is what
I was going to say.
The money is green.
Money's definitely green.
Right, but it's green because of all the black that they mine out of the ground there. So
yes, that oil.
So guys, let's do this way. I mean, so it's pretty much official at this point. It is official. Duke has announced an interim head coach. Nina King held a press conference today. Trooper Taylor, who was what Donald, you watched the press conference. Talk to us about what Nina King had to say about the departure of Mike Elko just a short time ago.
Yeah, it wasn't much. She didn't take any questions. It was actually at the start of the weekly basketball press conference that John Shire has. So she kind of stepped in and said some words there. But the long and short of it is this, she mentioned that Mike Elko and her had extensive discussions late into the night, last night, Sunday night, as to, investments in the program, the resources, probably a contract extension or money bump of some sort. And in the end, he informed Nina King that he was leaving for Texas A&M. And of course, a lot of fans out there saw that he flew to College Station in the middle of the night, landing about 2 a.m. local time here in Texas. She did mention, as you said, Jason, Trooper Taylor will serve as the interim head coach. He was the associate head coach and running backs coach this season for Duke football. There wasn't any talk about any of the other assistants that are on the staff, whether they'll be going with Mike Elko or staying at Duke. But we do know that Feely, the strength and conditioning coach that did come into Duke with Mike Elko, he announced that he will be leaving to go to Texas A&M to follow Mike Elko. So he's the only one that has officially announced his departure. What Nina King has already said about this search is already underway. A national search is underway. She's retained Parker Executive Search Committee to help with the hiring. And obviously this may be something that comes very fast, because another thing that she did mention is that she talked to the team this morning in person about the departure of Mike Elko, and also plans to talk this evening with the recruits, the committed recruits that were, signing day is just a couple weeks away. And so that class that was supposed to be coming in next week for kind of a homecoming type of camp, she's talking with those players and their families this evening in the hopes to maybe, stop some of this bleeding that is about to start with the transfer portal and with guys who may be actively reconsidering their commitment. So that was really all she said. It was less than a 10-minute press conference, but it's very clear that the long and short of it is Duke is in need of a new head coach.
Yeah, there are a million different ways we can take this, gentlemen. And I think maybe the first one is something that Donald mentioned there, that timing is of the essence right now. There are a number of recruits who have not put their name on the dotted line yet, who are expected to do that in the next couple of weeks. The transfer portal opens next week at this time. And Duke would both hope to be an active player in the transfer portal in terms of bringing guys in, because we had a lot of guys graduate and play, you know, or who will be graduating after our bowl game, who will be leaving the program. But we're also, you know, in addition to bringing guys in, we are also very much hoping to keep guys from departing the program. There are already many, many rumors out there about some big name player. Are we going to say it, guys? Are we going to get into it? I'll get into it. What the hell? There's a lot of talk that Riley Leonard is going to be looking at the transfer portal. There's open talk that Notre Dame is planning to make him a very lucrative NIL offer, the same way they did to Wake Forest Sam Hartman a year ago. Sam Hartman came in and had a really, really good season for Notre Dame at quarterback. Notre Dame needs a QB. And rather than growing one on their own, it looks like they are content to go out and find the best guy available on the transfer portal market and make him a lucrative offer. And Riley Leonard might be that name. We don't know anything for sure. That's just the rumor and speculation that's out there. There's a lot of doom and gloom around the Duke program, the Duke football program, unfortunately, right now. Hey, Sam, give me your thoughts on all this stuff. I don't know if you want to do the timing, if you just want to do, you know, the only getting 2 years out of Elko. There are a million ways we can take this.
Well, let me react first to what you were just saying. That the timing is essential here, and I am sure that Nina King is going to have someone in place sooner than later. These searches don't, like, Nina King doesn't start thinking about replacing Mike Elko at Sunday at 11 p.m. Right? This is a constant discussion. Duke maintains a potential list all the time. The search firms maintain lists. They've got all the background on these coaches kind of constantly up to date, because they know that the carousel moves quickly, especially as you mentioned, given the transfer portal, given that, you know, Duke has another game coming up in a few weeks that they're going to need to game plan for, and Mike Elko's not going to be there for it. And the other thing, as it pertains to both game prep and recruiting, is that Trooper Taylor's taking over as the interim head coach. By the way,
Sam, it's worth noting, Trooper Taylor was at Duke. He was part of the program prior to Mike Elko coming on board. And
yeah, he's been around for a few years. But I was going to say that whether it's him or anyone else on the coaching staff, particularly the more senior coaches, it's not like every recruit commits solely to Mike Elko or solely to Duke. In fact, in many cases, these players are committing to positional group coaches. So whether that's Trooper Taylor with the running backs or anybody else on the coaching staff, often these players are most sort of committed to whoever their positional group coach will be. And so when you see who moves around, it'll be interesting how much Mike Elko is able to retain his staff from Duke and bring them over. I would imagine that, given that Texas A&M, look, we don't need to go into the entire psyche of what A&M was thinking when they offered Mark Stoops first, and then when Stoops eventually turned them down, they turned to Elko. It's interesting that Elko was an assistant coach very recently under the coach they just fired.
Yes.
So
well,
there's
right.
an element of
he knows A&M. He was there for 4 years. Yeah,
he knows it, but it also means that he may retain some of the staff, because he already the guys that Elko might bring in, that he would consider bringing in, might include a lot of guys who are already there, because he knows some of them, in addition to bringing guys over from Duke. So we don't know how that's all going to shape out, but it happens very quickly, and everyone in college football world knows this is the case. Duke fans actually have not been exposed to this very much in recent memory, especially in the world of NIL. We've had one coaching change in like 20 years, almost 20 years, or 2 coaching changes in 20 years at Duke. And until this one, and like the last coaching change prior to this one, all the other ones were because everything was so bad. And the thinking was, look, it can't get worse. Let's fire the coach and bring in a whole new staff. Right. This is a different beast altogether.
Sam, my best friend and I have, obviously all of us have been kind of going back and forth in this over the last 24 hours. And my best friend basically summed it up like this, and I think it's perfect. The Duke fan base is learning how college football works today, because this is how college football works. Yeah. And if you think about it, there has been over the last, we're not young, but we're not old, right? we remember in 1989 when Steve Spurrier left Duke to go to Florida. He is Mike Elko to Steve Spurrier. That is the last time that a Duke coach left on his own terms, Duke University, to coach somewhere else. Everyone else has been fired. That is so there's a lot of people here who are experiencing this for the very first time.
And look, when we talk about that, there's a lot of angles to this, right? And this is why I felt like I wanted to come back on here, because I was trying to type up my thoughts on the DBR forum, but it was moving too quickly for me.
It was wild.
So,
forums Russian.
Anyway, here I am. Don't forget that when you post things on the internet, they stay there. Here's my thoughts on this situation. I'm sure I mentioned at some point over the last year that we can't be that upset when Mike Elko decides to pick up and go to another job. For a variety of reasons, Duke is not a destination program for college football. The odds that Duke ever becomes a destination program for college football are extremely slim, starting with the fact that Duke plays in a 30,000 seat stadium. And there are many programs that play in 80, 90, 100,000 seat stadiums. Those are the destinations. Those are the places where not only are the coaches getting paid, but the players are getting paid top dollar. If Duke was able to support more than that, Duke would build more than that. It is just the fact of the matter. The other thing that
Sam, hey, really quick, just a quick stat, because I looked it up. At Texas A&M, they will have more people attend their first 2 games than will attend every Duke game for the entire season.
Jason, they have more people attend Yale practice than attend a football game
and spring game and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is on a different. If you haven't been to a Texas A&M game or seen them on TV, if you don't remember what it was like when we played them in the Peach Bowl 10 years ago, it is a totally different world. Forget the fact that Texas A&M basically goes 7-5 and 8-4 every year, and then
fires their coach after 3 years,
and then fires their. Forget that, right?
Hey, you mentioned that Peach Bowl. That is the success that they have had over the last 13 years, is playing us in the Chick-fil-A Bowl with Johnny Manziel, that was the peak of A&M football.
I am not disputing that their demonstrated ceiling is not that much higher than Duke's. Not on the table here. What is on the table is that they have a lot more money. They play in a conference where they make a lot more money. The outlook for these two programs over the next 5, 10, however many years is vastly different. And frankly, it's a bummer that Duke hires Mike Elko away when Jimbo Fisher feels fairly secure in his job. I don't think when Duke hired Mike Elko, the thinking was, oh, he'll do well and then he'll be right back at Texas A&M being their head coach in 2 years, because they had to pay an enormous payout to Jimbo Fisher for this to be possible, even in the insane world that is Texas A&M football. So it's not like anyone knew that Coach Elko was going to leave in 2 years. I think I also said 2 years ago when we talked about this hire, I said, the best thing that could happen here is that he's not at Duke for more than 4 years, because if he does really well,
I remember you saying that.
Then he's on a short list and he goes somewhere else. So before we get to is it okay to take a plane in the middle of the night and not really tell the players goodbye? I mean, we can get into that for a second, but I want to throw cold water on the whole thing and say Duke is probably not going to do that much better than this when it comes to being a stepping stone for a coach to end up at a program with a lot more resources.
And before we get to the sauce, Jason, because I know we're going to get to the sauce, I will say, even this year, right? Even this offseason when he signed the extension, we said this is the best case possibility. We're like, hey, he did so well in year 1 that we knew that people were going to come after him year 2. So we signed him to an extension with a bigger buyout. Probably, I think it was, it's been reported at $5 million.
And you don't need an extension after year 1.
After year 1,
do a good job.
Unless you do a good job, and also when you know that people are going to be coming after your coach. As early, a month ago, Jason, when the rumors first started about Michigan State, and we were like, hey, and maybe A&M, we're like, hey, if Michigan State, he's not leaving for Michigan State, but if A&M or Michigan open up, he's going to have some discussions. And we this is something that in the minds we kind of hoped that he would stay, but it's the hope that kills, as we say in soccer. It was always a possibility that this was going to occur if he continued to elevate this program the way he has.
And Mike Elko, like, he didn't go to Duke. He didn't coach at Duke before he was here, right? Like,
he's got no great ties to us. We gave him a chance.
Like,
but that's it. Yeah.
And I want, if you're listening to this and you're like, but, I want you to do one mental exercise for me, which is whatever you do for a living. If you make $1 million and then someone tells you that you can go work at a different company and do the same job for like $5 million, I don't know what the exact numbers are here, but it's probably somewhere on the order of he's making $4, $5, $6 million more a year to do what he's doing, and potentially with a much bigger buyout and guaranteed money and all that stuff. If you could double, triple your salary and go work somewhere else
with better resources and better support
to do
more of a chance
better,
of success. Yeah.
If you tell me, and by the way, you've only been at your job for 2 years. If you tell me that you would turn that down, I think you're full of crap.
Forget all that. Forget all that. If you tell me that you wouldn't consider it, whatever, right? Like he could have come back and said, you know what? This is a great offer. I really appreciate it. Cutcliffe did this, right? He said, hey, great. I really appreciate your faith in me, but I already got a job. And that could have happened too. But when that comes in, the fact is you consider it because you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your family to at least think it through.
And the difference between Mike Elko deciding to go to Texas A&M in 2023 and Coach Cutcliffe deciding to stay at Duke in 2010, because people will some of you will remember this. Coach Cutcliffe had the offer to go back to Tennessee, and you might say, well, Cutcliffe spurned Tennessee. He was a longtime offensive coordinator there. Obviously, he coached a number of notable players at Tennessee. Blah blah blah. It should be the same experience. He stayed at Duke. Coach Cutcliffe had gone through heart surgery. He was, I think, a little older than Mike Elko is now. And he basically said, I ain't looking for that anymore. Like, he basically admitted, like, this Duke job is not as hard as a Tennessee job. It is not going to kill me if I don't succeed at Duke. And you know what? The way that Duke fired Coach Cutcliffe was like the most like, ride this out, we're going to treat you as nice as possible thing. Mike Elko's not there in his career right now. And maybe in 15 years, Mike Elko will be like, man, I wish I had just stayed at Duke. Like I got chewed up and spit out going back to College Station. But that's not where he is right now. And that's different scenarios.
Guys, so really quick, as Donald mentioned, let's get a little bit saucy because I agree with everything you've said. When Texas A&M comes calling with better money, better facilities, better blah, 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 and with their history in the game and a member of the SEC, not the ACC that's potentially tearing it. Remember, the ACC potentially tearing itself apart in the next 5 years or so. Yes, I get it. I'm not going to say it's a no-brainer, but I'm not going to say that if you said it was a no-brainer that I disagree with you. I completely understand why Mike Elko took this offer from Texas A&M. You do what you have to do, but you need to do it honorably. And according to everything I've heard, it appears that literally, while Mike Elko was telling his players, I'm going to decide something in the next 24 hours, literally at the same time as he was saying that, there was a plane flying to Durham from College Station to pick him up and take him to Texas A&M. I'm sorry, but that means that he lied to his players. What's more, a week ago, he told people at Duke that he was sticking around. I have sources. I went ahead and posted a tweet that got a lot of attention where I said Mike Elko is staying at Duke, has decided not to take the Texas A&M job or the Michigan State jobs. And that is because that is what he told people at Duke, including his players, including people in the athletic department. And I get that people change their mind. And I get that unexpected offers can fall into your lap. But if they do, change your heart honorably. And I think the fact that Mike Elko deceived his players, I believe he also deceived Nina King. Donald, you talked about the fact when they were talking and having negotiations, I believe he had already reached a deal with Texas A&M. That's sort of what I'm hearing. You know, I've got a little bit of a problem with that. Not huge, but I've got a little bit of a problem with that. And then the last thing is this. Those players that he wasn't completely honest with, they sweated for him. A major part of the way that Mike Elko remade this program was stepping up the conditioning and the weight room. And that is nothing but pure effort on the part of the players. There's no great strategy or scheme involved in getting better in the weight room. It's just about players putting in hard work and busting their butts. And I think he owed it to them to be honest. I don't blame him for taking the A&M job. That program, like I said, puts as many butts and seats in one game as Duke does in the entire season. It's a program with rich boosters who are willing to lay out serious sums of money to help out with NIL. It's a program that's going to pay him many millions more than Duke could. It's a program in a town that he's quite familiar with after being there for 4 years. It's a school where they take football as their lifeblood in the way that Duke does with basketball. I don't blame Mike Elko one bit, but I do wish he would have conducted the entire process a little more honorably versus hopping on a plane in the middle of the night and getting out of Dodge and then not talking to your players face-to-face the next day. The way he broke this to the Duke team, I mean, they already knew, but the way he supposedly broke it to the Duke team was he held a Zoom meeting with the team. And frankly, from what we hear, most of the team didn't even bother to show up. They were so disgusted with him.
Well, it was Nina King that said that she met with the team in person and delivered that news. So the Zoom meeting probably was irrelevant at that point. But look, I hear you on everything that you just said. Like, there's obviously different ways to inform a team that this is going to happen or this is going down. This is one way. He did not write the blueprint of this. This is something that is again, we're learning how college football works. This happens all the time. People get picked up in the middle of the night, get dropped off. I mean, Baltimore Colts moved a whole franchise in the middle of the night, right? Like back in '83. So this is not something that is new. It obviously, I know I can understand how that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. But also, when we look at the timeline of things, I think a lot of people said that initially, not yesterday's meeting or last night's meeting, but initially where he said, Jason, when you said he was staying at Duke, at that time, he probably was. He probably had planned to stay at Duke because at that point, Michigan State was about to hire Jonathan Smith.
I don't think he was lying at that point.
Yeah. Michigan State was about to hire Jonathan Smith, which they did on Saturday. And on Saturday, we heard that Mark Stoops was taking the job at A&M. And then 3 hours later, he backed out and said, no, I'm not going, or it fell through. I think the one thing I mentioned this on the DBR forums is everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Mike Tyson said that famously. The plan was to stay. The punch was $50 million or whatever it is that A&M offered on Saturday night. And on Sunday morning, he had to adjust his plan. So I think, or Sunday at some point, he had to adjust his plan and say, hey, look, I got to at least consider this, talk to the family, whatever. We had mentioned there's been some reports about what he's told recruits. I'm not going to speculate on whether they're true or not because we honestly don't know. But there are reports out there that he had told recruits one thing, that he was staying, and then turned around and did this. Same thing with the players. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is I don't like the way that happened. I think that part is, pretty messed up, but it's also not the first time this has happened. And again, guys in college football, especially the fact that we've had a lot of guys come in here on transfer, they've undergone some of the same thing over and over again. And I hate that for the players because, like you said, Jason, they have put in the effort. We have seen that firsthand, how this team has improved from year one to year two. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, this is the cost of playing football and trying to be in a competitive conference in football. Some of this is going to happen. This won't be the last time someone comes in and tries to steal a Duke coach. This won't be the last time that players need to get talked to and everything like that. We have to learn from this. So as Kara Lawson would tell you, we can handle the heart better next time.
And in the grand scheme, right, this is probably worse than what you would hope for, but better, I think, than you should honestly anticipate, right? Yeah. There is little honor among this group of people. Football coaches are changing jobs all the time, even the head coaches. Guys get fired really quickly. Guys get fired for dumber things. So would I like to hold him to a higher standard? And would I personally like to think that I would do this better? Yes. Am I realistic that they're answering to the media, they're answering to the fan base, they're answering to the players who are in the locker room, who certainly mean a lot. And I'd like to think that the coaches think most about how their families and their players are going to respond to all of this. There's assistant coaches, there's athletic directors, there's boosters, there's a ton of people that are thinking about every move here. what's crazy to me is that he had that meeting, and then apparently he talked to Nina King for a while last night, and somehow in the time that it took him to do all those things, he managed to actually physically get on a plane and go from North Carolina to Texas, which takes a few hours, and like land in the middle of the night. The other interesting thing that I know has been brought up like on Twitter and on various message boards is the difference in the way that Mike Elko appeared at Texas A&M and the way that Jimbo Fisher appeared a few years ago. Because when they hired Jimbo Fisher, it was fanfare, 12
grandiose,
like the whole thing. And Mike Elko just sort of arrived on the tarmac and got into a chauffeured vehicle and was off on his way. So I don't know if you can teach humility and rationality to the Texas A&M fan base, but maybe this is what Mike Elko will bring to them.
Before we get to break, can I offer one quick silver lining to us as a fan base? Remember, I graduated in 2004, and as Wilson on the DBR forums, who is in the same year as me, through our junior year, we had more national championships in basketball than football wins. That's the struggle that we had. If we were not far removed from 2006, 2007, where Louisville sued us for us backing out of the game, and our legal argument was we are so bad as a football program that any other football program would have sufficed as a suitable alternative, and the courts agreed. We are now arguing about whether it was poor for Mike Elko to run off in the middle of the night to accept a new job. Ladies and gentlemen, we have become a college football fan base.
All right, with that, we're going to take a quick break. This is supposed to be a DBR Bites, but it's turning into a full episode. Oh, well, what the heck. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about some potential names out there who could be the next head coach of the Duke Blue Devils. That's coming up in just a second.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
All right, guys, back from the break, and it's time to put Mike Elko in the rear view mirror and look ahead to what are some of the names, what are some of the possibilities out there for Duke's next football coach, the guy who will lead the program onward and upward, hopefully. Donald, you said you had a couple names. Go ahead and give me yours, and then I'll give you some of the ones. I've been doing a little bit of research on this as well.
Yeah, there's been a lot of names thrown out in the last 5-6 hours, and it's not necessarily that these guys are interested or that Duke may be interested, but they're, obviously people throwing out names for the sake of argument or sake of conversation. I'm going to start with one that honestly, you ain't got to sell me on this one. A lot of people have said that Duke's first phone call should be to Sherrone Moore, who has famously been the interim head coach at Michigan while Jim Harbaugh was suspended. Hey, if you call Sherrone and Sherrone wants to come, I'm telling you right now, just go get him. Like that man, I will ride for that man all the time, because he has done a great job in some pretty unusual circumstances up there in Ann Arbor. A lot of people have looked at David Shaw, a former Stanford head coach, not necessarily coach right now, but obviously has been in a similar situation, considering the fact that we have a little bit more of a stringent admissions requirement than some other schools do, and that he's had to be able to navigate that at Stanford. There's been a lot of other ones that have been thrown out. Jason Candle, who's the Toledo head coach, Willie Fritz, the Tulane head coach, Kurt Kignetti, the James Madison head coach, who's a little bit older than some of the other ones that have been on here. And Jason, here's one that someone threw out that kind of threw me for a loop, but again, there's a Duke tie there. Bill O'Brien, the Patriots offensive coordinator, who of course was an offensive coordinator at Duke back in 2005, 2006, before he went to greater success with the New England Patriots during that run. So those are a little bit, Jason, there's a huge list, but I want to see what you also came up with.
All right, so here's some of the names that I came up with. First one, and I think if this guy is willing to do it, I would grab him in a heartbeat. Troy Calhoun, the head coach at Air Force, he'd be super high on my list. He's done an absolutely elite job at Air Force since 2007. It's a program that has the same kind of academic limitations and hurdles that you have at Duke that don't exist at a lot of other programs. And frankly, Air Force has been really, really good considering it's one of the service academies. They've been really good in recent years. I don't know. Duke looked at him, by the way, when they hired Mike Elko 2 years ago. So they've already
Cutcliffe. And when we hired Cutcliffe,
yeah. I mean, he's someone that we've definitely admired in the past. I don't know that you're getting him away. He played at Air Force, and he's now been there, like I said, for like 15 plus years. But if Troy Calhoun's willing to listen, I would certainly want to talk to him. I'll give you another name that I'm actually really high on. Jeff Traylor, who's the head coach at Texas San Antonio, UTSA. He took a program that had losing seasons in 5 of their previous 6 seasons. And since then he took over and he went 7-5, 12-2, 11-3, and 8-4. He has shown that he is a winner. He's also considered to be a pretty good recruiter considering he was at UTSA. And then there are a couple pretty prominent coordinators who supposedly might be interested in this. The first one you have to mention is Duke's current offensive coordinator, Kevin Johns. And I think we may learn a lot about what Duke is thinking in terms of a replacement. If Kevin Johns follows Mike Elko to Texas A&M, then you know that he's probably not under consideration at Duke. If he instead sticks around at Duke, helps coach us in the bowl game, then I think there's a pretty good chance. I think Kevin Johns has a better chance than Trooper Taylor does of potentially landing this job.
I will say in Kevin Johns' situation, I think this is not an end all be all. This is not something that is a generic statement, but usually if a guy has a chance to stay, he's named at least the interim head coach, or at least in this situation, if he was being really up for consideration. I feel like, especially considering that he was a little bit more elevated on the level of associate head coach than Trooper Taylor was, it might be a sign that Kevin Johns is not interested in sticking around.
Yeah, I agree. It's entirely possible. When they named Trooper Taylor, I was like, I think that probably means Kevin Johns is not in the cards, but I was going to mention him anyway.
I have not done the research because I don't work here no more. But let me say a couple things about Duke's coaching search. Mike Elko in 2 years at Duke had a 640 winning percentage. I'm going to be thrilled if Duke's next coach has a better winning percentage at any point in his tenure, other than maybe after 3 games, because maybe, I don't know, next year we might start the season against a bunch of easy opponents, right? So let's keep all the expectations reasonable here, and let's also acknowledge that whoever, like, if Duke hires a head coach from another school, if they hire James Madison's coach or Air Force's coach or whoever, that guy is also going to be picking up and leaving town. And the cycle, Donald, you talked about welcome to the show. This is what happens everywhere. Maybe Duke will hire a coordinator and the sting won't feel as bad. Where I'd love to get an associate head coach from Michigan. That sounds like a great idea. They're probably headed to the college football playoff. So
hey Sam, I've also heard Justin Fry, who's the associate head coach at Ohio State. Supposedly there's some interest there. I'll tell you another one I'm really interested in.
Does Jim Knowles want to come back?
No, I'm really interested in Ryan Grubb, who's the offensive coordinator at Washington. The Washington offense is off the charts good. So
he was on my list too.
Yeah.
Can we get Michael Penix too? Is he in
I think the NFL might be getting him, but
we don't get.
You never know.
Look, we'll give up. Notre Dame can have Riley Leonard. We'll take Michael Penix Jr. and
deal.
And I think that's look. Whoever Duke gets, we know this whole cycle is going to happen. And the only prediction that I will make is that Duke will have a head coach in the next 40. Where it's almost 4:00 on Monday. Duke will have a head coach in the next 48 hours.
Wow, you think it's gonna be that fast?
There is, yeah, because you need to do all of this stuff. You need to do recruiting. You need to do bowl game preparation. You need to turn the NIL spigot back on. All of those things happen with a head coach, and they are very. All of that is difficult to do without a head coach. Now, whether that head coach who gets announced like coaches the bowl game actually is not always you don't necessarily plug that guy in to coach the bowl game, because because Kevin Johns and Trooper Taylor like know the playbook here, and they know the players better. And frankly, if you have the head coach just focused on recruiting and getting to know the players and not having to spend time in practice, then the transition can actually go a little
that's
easier.
better.
but I expect, and Nina King's a pro at this, right? We've talked before about how she's managed a couple of these coaching transitions, a couple big coaching transitions in her short tenure. She's got a good temperament for this. She knows all the people that she has to talk to. She's already got the search firm in place. I'm sure she already had the list going even before all of this, because she knows how the game is played here. And I bet Duke's going to have a new head coach pretty quick. And we will talk ourselves, at least those of us that aren't totally doom and gloom about this, we will talk ourselves into that guy being a good pick for Duke, unless it's Pat Fitzgerald.
Exactly. I will say this, Sam, you mentioned the bowl game preparation, stuff like that. I will say that losing a head coach really affects bowl placement. And as of right now, Jason, you and I talked over the weekend about how we were basically solidly locked into the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And as of this morning, that has gone away. A lot of these projections are going for lots of bowls that are
Fenway Bowl. Fenway Bowl.
Sam,
Bowl.
I love you, but I don't want to come see you in late December.
Fenway Bowl.
That is one that has actually been listed. Pinstripe Bowl.
Sam
Quick Lane Bowl
to the bowl game. Sam wants to walk to the bowl game.
But I think getting a coach in place will help again tell those people, hey, Duke's solid. We're on solid ground. You don't have to worry about them only lining up 15 people like their Texas State in unnecessary roughness. Like, we don't have to worry about that. But at the end of the day, I will say, for those fans who are not doom and gloom, and even for those who are, this bowl game is super important. Make sure you get out and support the team if you can get to wherever we end up in a bowl game. I know the players who stay are the players who are committed, and we need to show our love for them.
Yeah.
Fenway Bowl. Fenway Bowl.
Am I correct that the transfer portal will open and players could potentially leave before the bowl game happens?
That is correct.
That is just like that is a really screwy system.
The bowl game effectively happens in the second semester. So if you think about it in academic terms, the players are deciding to transfer at the end of first semester, and then they're gone to their next destination. The coaches talk about how the bowl games, this is so like, we're such basketball people that it like doesn't occur to us this way. The bowl game is basically its own season for the purposes of like who's on the roster.
We call it bowl season.
And yeah, it is bowl season. Like the players are different, the coaches are different. The coaches are already recruiting the next team. Coach Cutcliffe used to talk about how he liked to use the bowl game to start installing next year's system. Because you have the new coaching staff, it's like it's time to start moving on. And frankly, a lot of the seniors, like the seniors who are like going to start thinking about the NFL draft, don't even necessarily participate in the bowl game because they're anyone that's looking at going pro is thinking about that more than they're thinking about the bowl game. The guys who know this is their last opportunity to play college football, they're dialed in, but it's a totally different mindset around the program when it comes to bowl game prep. This is not the same way that you would think about preparing for the postseason. And there isn't an equivalent in basketball. Like you'd have to talk to a Carolina fan about this, but even preparing for the NIT is not the same as preparing for a bowl game.
See what you did there.
That was nice shade, Sam. That was really, really well done. Yeah. And look, this is part of the argument for why do we have bowl games again?
Because they're fun.
They're fun.
Because they're fun. I explained to my girlfriend recently about how bowl games work. Not to be that guy, but she was like, "That's really stupid." That was her summation of it.
But it's fun. But it's fun.
That's
what it is. It's fun to watch.
Look, next year we get a 12-team playoff, and I think that's going to make the bowl game seem really irrelevant.
and Texas A&M might finally make the playoff.
I doubt it.
There's a chance. There's always a chance.
Hey, look, Mike Elko, I still think Mike Elko is a great coach. He may do wonderful things at Texas A&M. The SEC is murderer's row. It is just.
Although, I think I was reading that Texas A&M gets like an easy version of the SEC schedule.
Yes, their schedule next year is insanely easy. Yeah, they have no Georgia, they have no Alabama. I think they don't even play Texas. It's like Their schedule's
Oh no, they're playing
incredibly
Texas.
easy.
They're definitely
They
playing
have
Texas.
to play Texas.
They're definitely playing Texas.
No
They're
one,
definitely
no
playing
one's getting
Oklahoma.
away with Texas going to the SEC and not playing Texas A&M. There's no way.
So the other thing that you have to think about, August 31st, 2024, Texas A&M opens up Mike Elko's first game, Notre Dame.
4th
Playing
and
against
16,
Riley
baby.
Leonard?
Maybe a Riley Leonard.
4th and 16. It'll forever be his down. Okay, guys, this is the longest bites we've ever had.
Fenway Bowl. Fenway Bowl.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's never going to happen.
Fenway Bowl.
The latest edition of DBR Bites is all done. I don't remember what number. I think it's 28, something like that. I don't even know. For Donald, I'm Jason. For guest star Sam, for Mike Elko, goodbye, sir. This is the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.
Fenway Bowl. Fenway Bowl.